Florida State should blow out Syracuse this weekend, but how and why?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for the everydayers that make this a fantastic podcast. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe, share, and comment on this podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast for free. And we are part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit of Florida State, Syracuse, kind of the finale. Going to give a prediction. I'm going to talk a little bit of injuries, unfortunately, for the Quse in particular. Holy cow, did they have a last couple of weeks of just all the wrong things happening. I'll talk about a little bit of a funny segment with Coach Babers from Syracuse when somebody asked him about the injuries and the depth. Not necessarily funny, depending on your perspective, but it's an ironic part of our landscape of college football that I'll talk about. And we're going to talk a little bit about why Florida State's going to win specifically, some of the things I think they're going to work on, and some of the things that, quite frankly, Syracuse just isn't going to be able to stop. So first off, I've got the Noles 45-17. I think it's going to be that bad. Originally, I had about 2 touchdowns or so, maybe to 20 points in that range. I just think it's going to be really bad. And here's why. This is the injury notes that I know of. And I'm as I note many times on this show, never trust a quote unquote complete list of injuries that a college coach, not a pro, but a college coach hands out. They are not in any way, shape, or form bound to give an injury report like they are in the NFL, and that matters. So these are some of the players. Dennis Quse, who's a starting defensive end, had a leg injury. He's out for the year now. That's really significant. They don't have a lot of depth, and he was a starter. Gadsden, I'd mentioned this earlier in the week, listed as a tight end, but he's more like a big receiver. He's out for the year. He's their number one option in the passing game. They also have an offensive lineman out named Wollaball and Stephen Mahar Jr., the tight end. When you have that many players that are key contributors out, it's rough. When you're Syracuse, it's rougher. Florida State, I have not heard. I'm sure there's something out there, but unless I know I try to chase a little bit, but unless the head coach of a program comments on an elite player like Johnny Wilson, I don't really care, because sometimes the other thing coaches will float out information that's completely false, knowing that media outlets will spit it out so the other team thinks they're playing or not, whatever it is, and then it's just the opposite. Norvell hasn't said anything to my knowledge as of the time I'm doing this podcast, so I'm going to assume Wilson's going to play. Then again, I could be completely wrong. That's the one player I don't know about, unfortunately, but it's also going to lead in. I'm going to look at it in a way like, even if he does, I think they're going to pull him pretty early, and some other players, because Syracuse, I just don't think is going to be able to move the ball against Florida State's front seven, and that's going to cause them problems, and Florida State's going to get up early. And we're going to talk about some of the younger guys and some of the reserves getting a chance to hit some big numbers. So we'll talk about that. But here's the reason I think Florida State's going to roll it up. The defensive end's out now. That's a problem. That helps your third down offense. Florida State already was a mismatch for them because Drake May had around 500 yards last week. Now, he's a little bit different kind of player than Jordan Travis. Not saying that he's not, but they're both mobile, and they can both beat you down the field with the deep ball. They're both two of the better passers down the field. Well, they just dropped 40 on Syracuse, the boys from Chapel Hill. Why would I think Syracuse is going to suddenly, in a week later, with fewer players, be able to slow down Florida State? I can't think of one. So add in the fact that, quite honestly, I trust Florida State to have more balance with their offense. This is, the same group. They've got a new coordinator at Carolina. Maybe they're coming into their own, but I just don't think this is going to go well from Syracuse, and pretty much from the outset. I think by mid-second quarter, we're talking 17-3 kind of game, maybe 24-3, 24-10. Like, it'll be 2 scores or more by the middle of the second quarter. And once you get to that point and you can kind of have carte blanche on the play calling, and they don't have one of their pass rushers, again, losing Quse, that's not good. Syracuse is in a pretty tough spot. And, oh, by the way, to that point, and I shouldn't pick on this, but it's something he said. I don't remember the exact quote. Dino Babers, the head coach at Syracuse, somebody asked him at his press conference, okay, well, you got injuries. Where's the depth? And he pointed to the point of it's in the transfer portal. Like, they had a lot of guys leave. Well, I mean, there's a bit of a cop-out with that. Okay, I get it. But at the same time, it's not like Syracuse has Georgia's depth or Florida State's depth or Texas's depth. Come on, man. So it's a bit of a cop-out. And I get, like, when they lost Gadsden, there was nobody replacing. That would be similar to Florida State losing Johnny Wilson for the season. That would suck. I get it. But it's not like they had guys all over the place coming off the bench that would be starting at other Power 5 schools. They're a solid mid-level Power 5 program that has a game or two a year that scares the crap out of good teams. Or I think it was 2018 or maybe it was 16 or whatever it was. Forget, they beat Clemson on the road. That was kind of crazy. But anyway, I don't think Florida State's going to struggle much in this game. I look for them to, quite honestly, just run a balanced, whatever they want offense. Johnny, if he plays, will get some, but look for complementary players. And I think of all teams, I know Florida State's been trying to do this. The tight ends are starting to get the ball a little more. If Jaheim is not on a pitch count, I don't know his situation either. Look for him to get quite a few passes his way. Syracuse isn't going to have an answer for him. You could see Marcus Douglas. You could see some other guys. You could see backup running backs. A guy like Tofili today, screen pass on Saturday, that could go the distance. They're not going to have the depth. And if Florida State wants to put their foot on the gas, go fast early in the game, because, again, the depth is a concern for Syracuse. Short passes and screens and just basic zone and gap plays, they could hit some big, big plays. And executing is the bottom line anyway. So this is like the home game. You're celebrating the 93 national championship team. There should be a lot of positive energy in Doak. I think they're going to come out smoking. It's just my opinion, but that's what I think. So balanced offense. On the other side, defensively, and here's the big one. And I'm not wishing anybody any ill. I do not think it's going to go well for Syracuse's offensive line, especially if you lost a tight end as well. Tight ends are like an extension of the passing game. And I'm not talking about just catching it, blocking, chipping a guy on the edge like Verse, etc. When you don't do those little things, quarterbacks get smacked. They've got an offensive lineman out. They've got a tight end out. They've got their best tight end / flex tight end out as well. That's a lot of dudes. They scored 7 against North Carolina, and there's no way in the world. Well, Carolina has talent. I get it. They don't have as much talent as Florida State. What do you think Florida State's front's going to do to Syracuse? I mean, I like Garrett Schrader a lot. He's a good quarterback. He's going to have a long day in Doak Campbell Stadium. So, unfortunately for him, that's just kind of the way it is. So, I got 45-17 Noles. That's my prediction. I'm not really going out on a limb with that after the injuries. Like originally, again, I thought 14-20. I've got it at 28 points now. Injuries just add to the conundrum for the Quse. And, sue me if I'm wrong. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the players to watch for Florida State that I think are going to get in the game like mid-second quarter. And I said I think by then they'll take over. And then going into that, for the third segment, we're going to talk a little bit around college football, just kind of big picture. Some of the games I did a matchup talk earlier about Florida State if they got to the playoffs. I'm just going to talk some college football in general with some of the best players, best teams in segment 3, just kind of have fun. So I'm going to talk to Florida State players that I think are going to do well in segment 2, though. So that will be entertaining as well. All right. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you need to have LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I've said this before. I've made the mistake in trying to hire just interns and not looking there. even if you're just trying to do a small business like I have done, it's very important to gain as much information as you can. LinkedIn's a very simple site to utilize, to post a job, to find people, to ask questions, to get the right candidates to filter through. It's pretty simple. I've used it numerous times. Make sure you check out LinkedIn Jobs for your business, because there's a niche for you, no matter if you're an accounting firm or if you're in sports media or anything else. Simple tools like screening questions. That's probably the most important thing, in my opinion. Make it easy to focus on candidates with the right skills for what you're looking for. And that's the bottom line. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Now, if we want to get into the projections, if you will, I'm going to go Jaheim Bell is the surprise breakout player in this game. He didn't play as much last week, and I'm not talking about volume of catches. I think he's just going to have a big play. He's such an athlete, and because he's listed as a tight end, H-back, fullback, whatever, he can do a little everything. I don't think he's given the credit not only around Florida State circles, but quite honestly, college football. This is a guy that is a perfect fit at the NFL level because they want to maximize. They want to get 53 roster spots, unlike 85 at college. He can play 3 spots and really kind of 4. He's like a big receiver sometimes, and not many DBs want to get in front of that on a 5-yard hitch route when he turns around. So this is a unique situation for him. He's going to be a little more rested after last week. I'm not saying that like Marcuston and some of the other guys won't play, but I have a feeling Bell's going to do really well. The other guy, I don't know where he's at, and part of this is going to depend on how much Wilson plays and the rotation. How much does Williamson get into the lineup if they do build a lead like I'm projecting? I'd be curious to the thoughts on the people that are listening to this that follow Florida State closely. Post on YouTube. I'm curious on this. He's got talent. He just hasn't had as many reps as some other guys. If he gets a chance to take one to the house, I mean, I know he's got the skill and whatnot. Is he going to be ready to maximize, to make a couple guys miss, etc.? I'm curious to see what Florida State does with him. Very curious, actually. Okay, I'm just going to say this for the record. I've said it 10 times in one way or the other, but I'm going to be a little more blunt here. For the love of mankind, let's find a way to get Destin Hill the football more than once. A reverse, double pass. Maybe he can throw it. Heck, I don't know. Do something fun. They need to do something like that in general anyway, just to set it up for the rest of the year with Duke coming up, etc. And let's have some fun here. Kind of old school Florida State when I was growing up, when they used to try old Riverboat Bobby with the gambler attitude. Nobody really did it like Bowden in that regard. Hakeem Williams, at some point, he's got to play more. Maybe this is an opportunity in the second half. I'm curious if he's ready to take on that role. I saw him in high school, and he's a very unique talent, but it's about running routes, knowing your responsibilities and all that. I get it. I'm hoping that he gets to play. I don't know exactly where he's at. I haven't heard anything, but this is an opportunity. You've got to, I know coaches are just anal as all get out. He doesn't know exactly what they got to make mistakes. Too bad. Do it anyway. He's going to probably make some errors. It is what it is. You got to get him in the game. Some point he's got to be ready. So you're not every year, you're just starting from fresh. You need guys to play. And then finally on defense, the guy that I'm curious about, and I'll admit it's a selfish reason, Conrad Hussey in particular. I know him. He played at St. Thomas Aquinas down in Fort Lauderdale. Great family, great people. I think he's going to do well at Florida State in any endeavor on or off the field. He's that kind of dude. He's the kind of guy you want your son to go hang out with or whatever. Good kid. Safety, nickel, corner, receiver. He could do anything in high school. He can really run. I'm curious to see if Florida State hones in. If they get, again, this is if they get a lead second quarter on, does he get in the game? Is he playing more nickel? Is he playing more in the back end? Is it still just mostly like a special teams opportunity? He has a chance, and again, I'm biased, to be a captain at Florida State at some point. He's that kind of personality. And I know that Norvell talked about him. If they could get, I don't know if I should go number, but like, let's say Cyprus comes out of the game, they're up by 25. They're up 42-17, 1 minute left in the third quarter, and they start just wholesale changes. Bethune's out. Akeem Dent and guys like that you want back in the lineup and all that. If anybody needs rest, that's fine. I'm not worried about that. But anybody that's starting, Thomas, I love to see him play because I think he is the next potentially great corner at Florida State. But anybody that comes out, some of these freshmen, man, I've talked about Kirkland. He's a kid that I have a lot of faith in out of Jacksonville. They need to get him in the game. They can have big plays too. They can add to the lead. These are high-level athletes that were recruited by SEC and ACC schools and beyond. Florida State needs to find a way to get them the ball. One last quick note before I go to segment 3 on the players. How many, just for fun, over-under running backs plays of 20 or more yards, pass or run, will Florida State's running backs have in this game? Leave a comment if you have an interest in that. I'm going with 3, and it could very easily be 5 or 6. But I just think they're going to throw a lot of short passes, try to keep it simple, and once they get a lead, not really try to bury them. I could be wrong, though, and it's not like facing Rodney Hill, if he's your third guy, is all that fun. So Florida State has a plethora of really good running backs. So Keziah Holmes, etc. This is a great group. A note before I go into segment 3 as well, make sure you check out College Football Live show that we have here on the Locked On Network, 11 a.m. It's running an hour to 2 hours. It's on the Locked On Network across the YouTube channels. You can find it here at Locked On Noles, and you can find it anywhere else, the Washington channel, the Texas channel, whatever. And if you cannot catch it live, it will be downloaded, and you can listen to it, watch it, whatever it may be. Check that out. Make sure you do. All right. FanDuel. This second section is sponsored by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season. America's #1 sports book is FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is easy to use. That's true. There's a wide range of betting options, including betting on players, over-unders. You want to do quarters. If you want to talk about touchdowns, or maybe it's a yardage total, whatever it may be, player props, you can do just about anything that you want. And again, most importantly, it's an easy app to go through. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right. This last segment is more of a fun one, and it's more of an opinion one. College football this year, in my opinion, is as weird as it's been. And I mean weird. For those of you that paid attention and were around, 2007 was bonkers. I don't think it's going to be quite that bad. I think, remember, right, LSU won it with 2 losses. I mean, it was a crazy year. This opportunity for Florida State and a few teams could go either direction. Like Florida State could run the table. Michigan certainly has a chance. Obviously, Georgia's schedule is not very difficult. I know they're in the SEC, but it's the East. They don't play Bama. They don't play LSU, etc. They got a kind of a weird schedule. And all these different teams that are still kind of around, like USC, Notre Dame game. Would you touch that if you went on FanDuel right now, or would you bypass it and go do something else? There are really hard games. The best game of the weekend is probably Washington hosting Oregon. All of these games matter to Florida State, though, because it's going to change. Because a few weeks, the playoff committee is going to convene, pump out what only thing that matters is their ranking, like them or not. And how these games play out the next couple of weeks is huge for Florida State when they are not on the gridiron. They're not playing as many top games. The Duke game could be if Riley Leonard's in it, but that's iffy. If Florida State is undefeated, where are they going to be ranked? A lot of that is going to depend on this weekend. You got Miami at North Carolina. You've got, again, Oregon at Washington. Anybody that Michigan plays, it's unique because they just been bludgeoning teams. This week, it's Indiana's turn to be the nail and not the hammer. Penn State plays UMass. They're favored by like 40, but I believe, yeah, they're going to the Horseshoe next week, and that's huge. I think Penn State's actually going to go to Ohio State and win. But I still, even if Ohio State won, I think Florida State by the end of this month will be ahead of Ohio State. I just don't think they're going to be impressive enough. But Penn State right now is kind of the team to watch. Their sophomore quarterback hasn't even thrown a pick yet. It's Drew Auer. He's very talented. We also have the Georgia situation. And what do I mean by that? Well, last week they woke up. They won 41-13, if I remember correctly. And they just beat, or maybe it was 51-13. I think it was 51-13 over Kentucky. Kentucky's a pretty good football team, and they just got absolutely taken apart by Georgia. Right now, if I had to rank it like 1 through 4, Georgia and Michigan, however you want to rank it, I would put Michigan first because they've been more consistent, but I understand if you put Georgia ahead of them. I think they're the two best teams. I would put Florida State number 3, Washington 4, but again, the Oregon game's big, and the caveat is Penn State and Ohio State. Those two teams are right there on that cusp. We'll see, and I think we'll find out about Oregon. I think they've got more pieces than Washington, but I'm not sure how good they are. I just haven't watched them enough, so that's probably not fair to them, but that's my pick. They'd be about number 7 or so. I think this is going to be a big weekend because these numbers that I got here, they could change. And they could also change with those people that do matter, and that's the College Football Playoff Committee. And that's another reason that for Florida State's sake and all the fans listening to this, you all should hope that I'm right on 45-17. There's a thing about, oh, don't run up the score. Look, that matters. A lot of these people don't watch the games. They look at box scores and they look at the final numbers going across the screen on the bottom of ESPN or Fox or NBC or whatever. It matters. Florida State cannot have a 26-13 game this weekend. Fair or not. They got to lay down the thumping because Syracuse isn't great. And quite frankly, again, the injury bug has hammered, not hurt, hammered Syracuse. There's no excuse for Florida State not to win, but they need to do so convincingly. So last thing before I get out of here, you can look at this however you want, but this little next stretch, Duke coming up obviously is important. If Florida State gets out of this stretch with 2 things, you don't complain. And it'll take care of itself to get into the playoff. Number 1, obviously, you want to be healthy. That speaks for itself. You got to say it, but you want to be as healthy as possible. Right now, they're doing okay considering where they're at in the middle of the season. Not too bad. Need to get Jordan Travis. It'd be great to get him to sit down a couple of weeks, but there's just no way to do it. It is what it is. Other than that, I think they're in pretty good shape. Number 2, and it's what I just talked about. When you get an opportunity, you have to lay the hammer down on the head of the nail. Points matter. Point differential matters. Yardage totals matter. They're going to say that it's not a big, it matters. When I talk to people in media, those are one of the first things we bring up. It is this. Do you really think the playoff committee is much different? No. Top of college football, there's some jostling. Florida State's pretty much number 3 to 5 on any of them. Oklahoma, I know that's for people that are probably throwing rocks. I'm not as convinced on Oklahoma as some other people, but they did play clutch against Texas. That's the only quality team they've played. Boy, they did. They were clutch at the end, and hats off on that final drive. That was classic as it gets. That'd actually be a pretty good game against Florida State again, because they played last year, but not as sold on them, and I think Texas will beat them in round 2. Final point before I get out of here. If Florida State gets out of these next 2 games undefeated, I think they'll be number 3. That's, if they beat Duke, even if they don't have Riley Leonard, that would be unfortunate for them, and I hope he gets to play because that actually helps Florida State's cause. They need to make that happen because you can beat them, and especially if you win by double digits, that's a really good football team. that'll help your ranking a lot. Come out of that game 31-21 or something like that, maybe even more. That would push Florida State to number 3 and really kind of help seal up before the committee meets and comes out with what's going to be honestly the real ranking. So with that being stated, everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the game and enjoy college football.